issue that was so centered on race, but at its core was about humanity, didn't compel those who weren't of that same race to act for whatever reason. You may not have felt like it was your fight. You may feel as though it was an intrusion, right? But whatever the reason, there was that blockade there. So how do we get over that blockade and get to the root of it, which is the humanity? And I think that's the framework that a lot of us are really putting in the work to do. People see class or they see race and they immediately back off and they think like me. I can't be, a feminist because that's white feminism. Or Africana womanism works for me so well because class isn't an issue, right? But class is an issue when you address the fact that it prohibits people from having basic human needs. Race becomes an issue when you realize it prohibits people from having those basic human rights of being able to walk home in peace, right? So when you begin to look at it that way and you shape it in a human framework, then we begin to do this outreach work of pulling the community in. And that's where I want to appeal to like the LGBT community and just like say that there is no reason, the same as we appeal to clergy, there is no reason why we all shouldn't be standing out there together in a stand for life, in a real stand for life. And then we can address, why we have to stand for this life and prove that Black lives do matter, right? But at its very, very basic, at the very entry level of the work we need to do, we have to protect lives. We have to preserve our humanity, whether or not that's an 18-year-old white boy or whether or not that's a 19-year-old Black boy. We have to preserve their life. And just before I close out, like I said, I want to open up the conversation because I feed off of that. But before I close out, I definitely want to speak of some of the challenges I've had in doing this work, which is making sure that the life that I lead and the way that I relate to people in more intimate settings and in the places where I'm building with people is reflective of the work I'm trying to do in the community, right? So what that means is if I want to bring in the LGBTQ community into this Black oppression, fight against Black oppression and this fight against state violence, I have to appeal to them firstly and show them why the issues they thought were issues aren't really issues because we're all human. But then not only that, once that happens and I appeal to people and we bring them in and we get them to care, we have to make sure that the space that you're walking into is a safe space for you, right? So that means for right now, hopefully we won't have to get to that, but it means for right now, people like myself and Ashton and KB that have taken up the struggle of straddling the line, right? And having one foot in both places have to be that bridge. We also have to be that bridge. So we have to do this outreach work and then we have to do outreach work to the Black oppression community and make sure, right? And make sure that xenophobia is addressed in a real and a loving way. Because we do that within our own circles, right? We ask PGPs. Thank you for that. We make sure that people know that when they step into a space like this, that it's inclusive and that it's safe. But when we go out and we do this work on a grand scale, how are we doing the work to make sure that in the real world that's reflected? That's reflective of the space we've created in here, right? And that's kind of what I really want to explore because I've noticed, as I'm sure others have, that doesn't necessarily happen. And maybe that's another hurdle that we have to overcome in order to merge our struggles, right? But that's something that I definitely have struggled with myself is, making sure that I'm calling out the issues on both sides, but not just naming them, actually doing the work to make sure we overcome them. Because naming and putting the work in are two entirely different things. Sometimes we confuse them. I've acknowledged that issue exists and now we're good. I put Mao women at the table and now we're fine. It has to extend beyond that. We have to really do the work. And I'm excited to hear from everybody and hear what you guys think that work looks like. So that's,
So, just because those two questions have come up and we want to kind of address those things if it's okay with you, we'll just kind of throw that out to everybody. I think one of the questions on the table is how do we tear down the blockade that keeps us from working for human righs? Is that something
Yeah.
Okay. And then the other one is how are we making, and I like to call it brave spaces. I think safe spaces are safe, but we need to be brave. We got to be brave. And so how do we make brave spaces for our LGBTQIA as family in other spaces that may seem unsafe? So how do we do that? Do we have this is I posted this on Facebook and I said we are calling a family meeting, right? This is a family meeting. We are family and we need to figure out how to be family in this space and out there. So how do we do that? And let's just acknowledge that family doesn't always agree. Okay. We'll acknowledge that from the get-go. That'll be our kind of overarching theme is that family doesn't always agree, and it's okay because we're still family. So, Bishop Greenlee, I think, says you can be offended. You can take offense without being offended. That's what he says. So don't be offended if somebody says something that you don't agree with. It's okay for us to disagree. The point is to have the conversation, and not only have the conversation, but to do the work, as Ashley said. We have to start doing the work. So let's name those things. How do we, let's just take it one question at a time. How do we tear down the blockade that keeps us from working for human rights? Let's start there. Floor is open.
And Keith Rose, who's over there, is going to be helping out.
So yeah, I didn't introduce myself before. So I'm Keith Rose. I'm from Alton, which is in Illinois, but St. Louis is my town.
What's your GP?
I'm sorry, I think my general practitioner.
That too.
Keith is a comedian.
I use male pronouns. So I'm identified as gay, and I've been out in Ferguson quite a lot. I help with the jail support hotline and finding people out.
Thank you.
Awesome. And then I also help as a legal observer for the National Lawyers Guild. So like when people get arrested, we document how it happened and hopefully we'll help them with their trials. And beyond that, I also was one of the very first people arrested in Ferguson back on August 11th. So, and this kind of became like something that was really interesting to me because there were 10 protesters arrested. We were the first protesters. It was at noon. We weren't protesting. So we were arrested. So we actually shared jail cells with the looters. And so I became very good friends with them. Like they had me on Facebook and whatnot. But while we were arrested, of the 10 of us, 2 of us were gay males, and another one was an openly bisexual male. And we had some really interesting conversations in the jail cells with these, looters who have been in the media so much, and none of you guys have ever met. And I can tell you that I got some of the most interesting questions that I still can't answer, and it's been over 2 months. And I feel like having these dialogues is one of the most important things for me in my own personal journey, and hopefully other people out there will be more open to speaking up. So I'm going to be taking Stack, which is basically like a system of figuring out who's talking next. And so if you see me like point at you, that means I'm writing you down, and you know that you put your hand down. Also, it's going to be progressive Stack, so I might not go back to you if you keep raising your hands because we want to try to get a diversity of voices. Like that's kind of the point, right? And another thing, if you're standing up and you'd like to sit on the floor, we have space up here. Feel free to come up here and make it more like a,
chairs
discussion. Yeah, so if none of you guys want to do that, make it look foolish, that's fine. And with that, I think we should open up with a question. Yeah.
All right, so we'll repeat the question. How do we tear down the blockade that keeps us from working for human rights? Yes. What's your name?
Oh, sorry.
Preferred gender pronoun.
My name is Matt. My preferred gender pronoun is whatever. I don't care. I was respectful. Respectful. So I identify a lot with your story, and I'm significantly older than you. But the reason why I say that I open up with that is how do you like the process of straddling various communities, and even I see that now. Do that. I volunteer with a couple organizations right now, and even within those organizations, I do not necessarily feel just equally as safe intellectually, right? So that being stated, but I think the first place to start in blockades is start in the macro. You got to examine yourself, look at yourself. what are really your motivations? And what not just like, oh, that sucks. I didn't do it. I can do better next time. Sometimes you gotta give yourself a break, but really work to challenge yourself. Even when no one else is watching you. And I have lost integrity in that sometimes. I've lost a lot of integrity in that. And I want to be honest and own it and acknowledge that. But also once you get to that place, all right, I'm gonna mess up. Like I said, I'm gonna fuck up today. I fucked up today, but you know what? Tomorrow's a new day. And then you move outwards. You have those conversations with other people, your people around you in your circles. And then you move out larger to the macro. And also realize get in where you fit in. Everybody can't be on the front lines, and that's okay. Yeah, because first and foremost, being brave is also being alive. Being brave is also knowing your niche and working that niche and being a master at it. Not saying you cannot learn anything. Not saying that you cannot um, take on new knowledge. What I'm saying is just get in where you fit in and work that. And don't beat yourself up, but also challenge yourself. And that's the hard balance. And also realizing that young people are here. So I work with young people, and people say that, like, I work with young people, look at me, I'm so great. I'm not saying that, because really, when the work is really great, when the work is really awesome, in my experience, it's a give and take, it's reciprocal. Reciprocal meaning that I was here. You said I helped you, but I don't feel like I feel like you gave me much more than I can give you at those. And those moments should happen often in the best case scenario. And I think from as an older adult, um, what I take away with my work with young people is learning to harness and regain my passion. And then what I'm able to offer is, hopefully, in theory, I'm able to offer is a little structure. You know what I'm saying? Not saying that what I say is right. All right, you're right. You know what? I'm so old now. I forgot all about that. You know, now I romanticize my experience with you. So honestly, know your triggers. Know where you do your work internally first, and admit that knowing that tomorrow you're going to say something wrong, you're going to do something oppressive, you're going to do something ignorant, you're going to do something that is not um, forward thinking, but tomorrow's a new day. And a good example is that, like, I had a conversation with a person at work, working predominantly white boys club organization, and anyway, and it was a young white woman, and this is important to the story. She's a feminist. So we're talking about Ferguson, and safety tells me not to get angry. Safety tells me I can't show my emotions. Safety tells me shut the fuck up. Sorry. Safety tells me all these things. So I do. I'm like, I gotta pay, gotta eat. I'm a fat boy. And so we have a conversation, and we're going back and forth. I mean, long story short, and she goes, well, people just need to not use the race card. And I just internally I set off. I said, okay, so would you consider me a feminist? Yeah. Okay. Would you consider me having privilege in my male privilege? Yeah. Duh. So would you consider me attempting, not successful, attempting to be an ally most times? Yeah. But I can have privilege, right? Yeah. So if that's the case, it's an even possibility that race can play a role in that. She's like, whatever. I go, that's the same no privilege. And just to sum it all up, and I told her, I said, even that statement, it was important for me to make you feel safe as a black man, as is equally as important for me to make you feel be heard as a man. It's on my privilege. So you gotta realize that there's no one road. You're not always gonna be the oppressor, you're not always gonna be the oppressor. You all play those roles in those places, and realize where does that come from, the motivation. And I think you start with yourself. I took up too much time. Sorry.
Thank you.
Just as an aside, the bathrooms are here. And also, if you have questions for Ashton or Ashley, feel free to ask those. Or Ed. All right, so in case we need to say the question again, how do we tear down the blockades that keep us from working for human rights? Yes. Yes. Can you stand up now?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mel. I publish June Kirk, etc. I work with the National Game Listening Task Force and other supported organizations here in St. Louis. I want to thank you all for doing your hard work. It's really appreciated. I think it's really important for us as white folks to step out of our safety zones and check our privilege and be accountable to each other in this work. That just because we're white folks in this work doing the work doesn't mean we're like, that we're free of our racism. And to just keep that in check as we're doing our work. Keep each other in check. Don't wait for folks of color to step in and ask us to check our racism. Really, that's up to us to do. Maybe to find each other and find ways we can connect with each other around keeping each other accountable as white folks.
I was just gonna jump on jump on Stack real quick. So I just want to mention two things. So I think it's really important, especially in struggle, to look at the past, right, and look at the lessons that we can learn, especially for our movement. So the other day I was looking up the 1983 like Pride Parade. It was like incredibly interesting for the basically how relevant that was today. If you remember, like 1983 was like the height of like the AIDS crisis and basically like the backlash against the gains that we made as a community since like starting in the 1950s. So there's a couple really interesting things that happened. So there was, by the way, there were like hundreds of thousands of people that participated in this Pride Parade. So in every city where the Pride Parade was happening, there was this conflict. You had on one side, you had the people that basically wanted to make the Pride Parade a statement to, worldwide that like, oh, we're just like you, we're respectable, and like we want the same things as you, and so they wanted to be really they wanted the Pride Parade to be really festive. The other side was like, hell no, like we're being attacked on the street, like literally like anti-gay violence, right? And then the state is not responding to the AIDS crisis, right? Which was huge, right? So there's a couple really interesting things that happened. So namely in Seattle, right? They were so in Seattle, it was like basically the left that basically had control of the steering commission for Pride. And so one of the things that they did is that they had conversations about ageism, homophobia, racism, and women's rights. Right? It's really fascinating. What happened in San Francisco, basically the left didn't have that much control of the steering committee. But really fascinating thing happened during this like debate they had as part of the Pride Parade. One of those was about like a police station that was going to be put in this mostly low income and queer of color portion of part of San Francisco. And so you had basically like the white business community white queer business community was basically just like, oh yeah, this should be fine as long as the police have sensitivity training, right? And you had the left wing that was just like, hell fucking no, right? Like basically the police's role in society is again to defend the status quo, and the status quo is not us, right? And we do know that people of color are targeted by the police, and so this is really interesting for Ferguson, right? What they said is that basically the police should be under democratic control, and that we should have a civilian review board. This is 1983, right? I would challenge people in thinking about this, that like we are all oppressed under this system. This is all our fight. All right? This is all of our fight. So I just want to say, like, we should all be playing an active role, right? I would argue that like what's basically tied into all of our oppression, right, is a system of capitalism, is a system of profit. You're not going to find liberation under this system. And so, like, if that means we have to have fights, just like members of our community, like Sylvia Rivera had to have, right, in the past, then we have to fucking do it, right? If that means we have to challenge some of the mainstream queer organizations, then we have to have it. If that means that we have to fight amongst people in our own community, we have to have it. That means we have to fight amongst people that are demonstrating for the same thing in our community, benefit of our community. So we have to fight in Ferguson and say, we have a place here, we have to freaking do it. We have to do it. It's like
Also, one more thing before people go, I got a request from someone watching on the live stream. If you have a Twitter handle, could you please say it so that they can
sure.
write that as well? So we already have you guys. Just starting now. Go ahead.
I'm on the rent. No Twitter.
No Twitter
None that I want to give.
I don't have Twitter either, so.
I guess I just wanted to say that breaking down that blockage I find to be very hard, especially, I think all of us in this room can agree, we are proactive and we are agreeing with the Ferguson or with that fight. But trying to get that to people, especially our gay and lesbian organizations out here that don't want to get involved. We have to be able to stand up and say, even though we don't want to get involved, for whatever reason it is, it's not my fight, is what I've been told by one organization. That doesn't concern us. We have to stand up as a voice together and say it does concern us. It concerns us as a community. So we have to be brave enough to be able to stand up to those organizations and go to these organizations that supposedly represent us and represent our community and say, we do want you to get involved. I think so many times, just like it's been brought out here, a lot of those organizations are headed by Caucasian men. And so, of course, they don't feel this is their fight. They don't want to get in it. I've been told that because they are not-for-profit organizations, they don't want to get involved. So we have to give them reasons, and we have to be the ones to say, it is a way to get involved, and you need to get involved. Even if it's a message of, I say, even if it's a message of, we are not taking a side, but we're saying we support the struggle and we support the fight for justice for all. The other thing I wanted to bring up is a lot of times it is hard to talk to people about the subject of racism, of bias, of what's going on and how there are different white privilege. I'm not toting any organization, but I just wanted to say I took a community class. It was free. It was offered by the Diversity Action Partnership, and they hold these free classes of how you talk to people about the subject, how you engage in dialogue versus debate, how when you're, like the young man said here, how you're standing at the water fountain at work and you're hearing these conversations go on that you know you truly don't agree with, how to channel those conversations into a positive way and maybe make a meeting. You know, let's meet outside, let's get together, let's talk about this in a way that maybe some issues can be resolved or at least some things can be brought to light that maybe otherwise wouldn't. So I encourage everybody to really go out there and look at the Diversity Action website and look at those communication classes that they offer. They're totally free. And it was really cool for me to take that and just to gain ways of how you speak up on this issue and to get the courage to speak up. A lot of times when we don't know how to handle ourselves, we're less likely to say something.
My name's Emma. I use she and her pronouns. My Twitter handle is Angry Feminist, FEMMANIST. And I'm a student at St. Louis University. Yeah, hello. So I was involved in Occupy SLU as much as I could be. Yeah. Some awesome people. Thank you, Tribe X and Freedom Fighters for being out there. Like, holy shit, thank you. That space needed that so much. So I had a lot of conversations with, or I tried to have a lot of conversations with some of my white peers who were very closed off to having those conversations. They came into a space to talk about a flag that was put up as a signal of distress and not about the fact that Black lives are being lost. So I definitely did have some trouble having, conversations like white person to white person, here's what we need to be talking about, and it's not a piece of fabric. And in that space, my identity as a queer woman was compartmentalized because, it doesn't I don't know, it was really difficult to be in this space and be like, okay, I'm white privilege, let's talk about this, like white person to white person, this is what we need to talk about right now. And to compartmentalize that part of my identity that is so important to me. But I wanted to go, I guess, back to the original question about how do we bring in kind of all sects of humanity into this. At the end of last semester, there was a really horrid bias incident on our campus, an incident of hatred where someone used a projector screen in our student center and they wrote Nazis rule and fuck N-words and F-words like on this giant screen in the center of our campus. And that was the first time in my 4.5 years at SLU that I felt really unsafe on my campus. And our Black Student Alliance took very quick action to speak out against the incident. And it was during finals week, it's hard. Last week was midterms week, and we had Occupy SLU. This shit happens at really awful times in our lives. But we have to work with that because they're issues of humanity, they're issues of lives. And that's more important than the grade you get on a test, in my opinion. Anyway, so BSA, Black Student Alliance, took really quick action, and they were doing really awesome work on campus. And I had to have some really hard conversations with some members of Rainbow Alliance, our GSA, as to whether or not we should be involved in those actions. And so it did take some really difficult conversations. Tears were shed. But at the end of the day, it was me talking to my white queer peers saying, not all queer people are white people. Hello. There's this group of BSA and Rainbow sitting in a circle talking and, pointing out that simple fact that queer people are people of color too. You are not the only queer people on this campus, in this circle, right now, right here. And eventually, Rainbow Alliance was on board, which was great. Thank you. So I guess I just want to encourage all of my peers here, and not peers, I guess. Is that an age thing? I don't know. But queer people who are white in this space to keep challenging the groups that you're in, and even stating this very simple fact, we get it, right? Queer people are people of color too. Just saying that can sometimes go a really long way. So, yeah.
Okay, my approach, I'm a minister and my approach is more loving and more Jesus-centered, but I get it. What's your name? I'm June Glover again. Hi. But I get it. Even Jesus got pissed off. And so, even Jesus got pissed off. But this is a start to answer the question, how do we start? Recognize our own judgment, shame, and guilt, because we all have them. Recognize them, forgive ourselves. Get in tune with your God self and recognize we are all connected. Recognize that all lives do matter, not just Black lives, white lives, even the cops' lives. They do matter, you guys. We all matter. And I recall a picture that was on Facebook where it looked like it was a Cardinals baseball game, and he had a jersey on and a sign on his back that said, "I am Darren Wilson." And I said to myself, I wish I could have been there in that moment, and I had a sign on my back, stood in front of him that said, "I am Michael Brown." And I would have turned around and said, "Can we have a conversation?" It starts with that. It starts in a loving way. We can't keep going full blown, kicking ass and all that stuff. We got to start at least with the conversation and an approach where we can hear one another. That's all I have.
I have a white hat on.
Surprise!
I'm here to state the obvious. My Twitter handle is CW Jedi 1.
CW Jedi 1.
You got it. And it's a great question about what keeps us from being in solidarity, and I was just thinking about that in terms of, I think one of the biggest reasons is capitalism, and that it really keeps us separated, and it really creates this sense of scarcity of like, it is so hard to just get your basic needs met, right? Like the minimum wage and all of that crap, just everyone's exhausted at the end of the day, and they don't show up for each other. So I feel like that sense of scarcity is a big deterrent to solidarity. The second thing I was thinking about was just like as a queer person thinking about like somebody shared this insight with me about how when we don't deal with our own internalized oppression, we don't show up for each other very well. So like I have all this internalized homophobia, like I buy into the messages that gay people are weird and bad and all that stuff, right? And so I'm not showing up in Ferguson or for other groups that are targeted because I haven't dealt with my own shit. So that being a part of our work is to like do our personal work, to like deal with our internalized sexism or whatever it be, so that we can like be braver and show up more strongly.
Hi, I'm following for female pronouns. I think one of the ways to show up and break down the barriers is to understand how the system wants us to have barriers. And that I thought in the 80s that the LGBT queer movement was going to really change this country because we were anti-racist, we dealt with sexism openly, we talked about classism all the time, we were really radical, we were out there wanting to change things, we talked about capitalism, we were out there in the streets, and you know what? The system figured out we were dangerous, and they assimilated us. And the thing about this movement, which I am so incredibly excited about, I love you all, is that the analysis is all there. I hear the words about the analysis of what we need to be and who we need to be. I hear it out there in front. And that's awesome to me, because it used to be that we whispered those things to one another. We're not whispering them anymore. And I think that's where we need to go. We need to understand that if we are really going to change this country and change the world, I mean, it's possible, it really is, it's happened before. If we're really going to change this country and change the world, we have to recognize the system wants us to not cross those barriers. And we need to fucking do it.
Steve looks great. Like he wants to go next.
So I already spoke once, and I still have a lot to say, so I'm feeling bad about that. But to go off of what Chloe said, I think that this analysis is not just the analysis of the early queer movement. It's the analysis of the movement of my life, which is the AIDS activism movement. We really believed in the 80s that we could change the world, that we were dying, and so it didn't matter that we could do anything. And we had an analysis. The number one demand of ACT UP was universal health care for all. And we sold that out for Ryan White and healthcare just for people with HIV. And I too see this moment as another chance for a bite at that apple for us to really change things. I was inspired by the movement of the 70s. I'm just this much away from it. I missed it by this much. I made it to the 87 march. I didn't make it to the 78 march. And then when I look back, it's not just those movements. It's the labor movement. It's the labor movement that was so radical and so transformative that then got co-opted. That if you look at every, and I'm going to say a word that pastors may not want to hear, but it's already been said by other people. If you look back at every change movement, they started with this phrase: "Fuck the system." Yeah. Every social change movement started there. And they ended with, "I got added to the system, so I'm going to sit down now." The gay community has sat down. The AIDS community has sat down. And I hate to say it, the feminist community has sat down. Correct. The labor movement sat down a long time ago. We must all stand up. We can't afford to sit down. We are led, our organizations, and I love the hope of saying we can agitate inside our existing organizations. I love that hope. I have none of it. Other people have it. Please go agitate inside our organizations. I believe our existing organizations have been totally co-opted. They are completely assimilated. Our movement, the gay movement, and for people who are allies of the movement, here, thank you for being here tonight, but I'm going to speak to the family for a minute.
Are we all family?
And our family, in 2000, there was a march on Washington. It was the first march I didn't go to, that I could when I was an adult. And I didn't go because we moved, as a movement, gay and lesbian movement, we moved, LGBTQ movement, we moved from that point of we must change the system to let us into the system. And I'm legally married myself, so I'm not gonna say that if marriage exists, that gay people should be able to marry. But the message should not be we're just like everybody else. Because nobody is just like everybody else. Everybody is unique. And when we try as a movement to be something else, we are pretending and we are fools. And here's why. I sent out a text. I sent out a Twitter about being at this today. And my Twitter is SF Holsworth. So, and here is the response that I got back. What do fags have to do with niggers? So if you, as a gay community, are not willing to stand with people of color in their struggle, that's fine. Just know that the people who are our enemies don't care that we're not standing with people of color. They still hate us. So if you're afraid of losing your assimilated status by stepping out into the streets, that assimilated status is an illusion. It is an illusion. And the last thing I'll say is, none of you need to hear that. You're here because you agree with me. Where are the people who don't agree? Where is the board of directors of Pride St. Louis? Where are the organizers of HRC St. Louis? And though I hate to say it, where is the staff of promo? So
Are they here, by the way? Do we have anybody?
Anybody here?
Don't be afraid.
Yeah.
No, I'm
There we go. So
There you
Basil, the bisexual. And so we're and you know, and we could go on and on. All of those. The center I know has its struggles right now, but they did a big event in September with you know, the Corpus Christi coming into town and had a whole weekend of events. And where is their history of Stonewall to teach us all how we got our rights by fighting in the streets? By 6 nights of riots. How many times I have to tell people that it was 6 nights of riots? People who think that at Stonewall we showed up and waved a sign and we're peaceful and everything changed and the police no longer arrested us. The police have raided gay bars in Dallas and Atlanta in the last 3 years. It's not over. They used anti-gay slurs as they dragged people from the bars in Atlanta and dragged people from the bars in Dallas. Yet we sit and think that somehow it's okay. We're all assimilated now. We're all part of the mainstream. We can go to work. We don't get thrown in jail as often just for being gay. So it's all okay now. We can just calm down and, like every other movement before, sit down. I'm not ready to sit down yet. I hope that more of my quotes will. But now I'm good for the purpose of
I'll put myself on staff next because I can't hear that and not speak up. Steve was actually one of my heroes, so it's pretty awesome to hear him talk. I have seen such bullshit come out of my community that it makes me ashamed to identify as LGBT. The queer community, yeah, we're pretty on point with a lot of stuff, but the LGBT people can go fuck themselves when it comes to their issues of dealing with race. Or, a matter of fact, their denial of the issues of race. They say that we are a family, but I do not see any black or brown in my rainbow. There is some kind of problem when we have to agitate within the LGBT organizations to try to get recognition of the existence that Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have to tell someone that who is spat upon sometimes when they walk down the street. You know what the fuck it is to be discriminated against, and why are you not speaking up?
Man.
We have sold out. We have sold out our position as agitators to become human, but in doing so, we have lost our souls. I would rather be on the fringe of society for eternity than be part of the bullshit that the LGBT community has allowed to fester among itself for so long. It is worth noting that one of the cops who was fired because of the racist shit he said on Facebook was out as gay. This is what we're putting in our community.
Wow.
We say there's gay cops and therefore the cops aren't so bad, but look at what they do. We say that there's, you know, LGBT friendly pastors, but some of the pastors, I've heard sermons on the internet that make me ashamed to be white. Luckily, I'm not Christian, or it'd make me ashamed to be one of them too. I have on my phone screenshots of people on Grindr with things like no nigger/Jews. Wow. That person was less than a quarter mile from me while I was. So that person was less than a quarter mile from me while I was on WashU's campus. Wow. I have another person who was less than 96 feet from me, according to Grindr, who said, #I am Darren Wilson. No, motherfucker, you are not Darren Wilson. They do not respect you. Why the fuck do you respect them? Our problems with cops are not gone just because sometimes we might see a police contingent in the gay pride parade. Just because sometimes they do not call us faggots when we're in jail. Sometimes. Wow. Our problems with cops will exist until there is no longer a police presence occupying our community. Yes. And by that I mean the entire regional community. So my question to you guys is, what can we do? And I've been asked to have us break out into smaller groups. What can we do to further this discussion? Because clearly there's an audience, but it seems like there's no particular group that's willing to take leadership of this.
So what can we do amongst ourselves in this grassroots effort here to further the issue of LGBTQ Ferguson, to take the intersectionality that we witnessed here tonight and expand upon it? So I'm going to ask you guys to break out into some groups. Ed's going to go first.
Before you do that, I'm sorry. So, well, do you hold it?
Well, we have the space for that.
We do have a space. So hold on. So everyone, take out your cell phones because this is the hands up. If you're not connected to the text service that they have, this is the Ferguson sort of like putting out information. So it's 90975. If you text to 90975, the word hands up, that has been used for the last week or like since Ferguson October, the last weekend. So 90975, hands up, because I don't want to lose the momentum. People may have to go, and I know there's other events going on in Webster tonight and other things. So, and then the other thing I just want to quickly say before we break up to small groups is I want to give up really major applause to Kaveh, who owns Blank Space over here, who he's my favorite ally who's Persian. I just always give him Persian jokes.
You'll have 3 shoes up here, so.
So listen, if you could definitely, if you didn't get a drink on that, he's really gracious to give us his, give him a tip of, he's not asking me to do this, but even if it's like 50 cents or $1, because he's doing a good thing here on Cherokee.
Or 2 shekels.
There you go. Yeah, so I just wanted to say that the text and keep yourselves connected to the movement. So I didn't want to take away from you, Keith. Sorry.
No, it's fine. So, do you guys want to have us break out into groups? Do you want any specific topics for these groups, or what do you want?
Well, it's 7:52. We've got till 8:15 is my.
Yeah.
Or what do you say?
Go for it.
Okay, so if we have the time, then let's do it. If people want to, if we have the time, I'm okay with that. I just don't want to keep you here and you need to go home.
Gotcha.
We love you. We'll tip you more.
So let's state what we're doing, so this way people know what we're doing. So,
Go ahead.
Keith, why don't you say?
You say what we're doing.
Oh, okay.
You have it ready.
No.
So if people want to discuss what's next, I recommend you stay and network. Don't just rush out of here and go home back to your lives of watching live streams or Twitter feeds. If you actually want to change the shit that we've been complaining about for the last 2 hours, please hang around a little bit, talk to people, and figure out what you're going to do next. I'd like you to walk out of this building with an idea of the next thing you're going to do to make this situation better.
So I don't know that we have to break into groups for that. Can we just, as a family right now, say this is what we're going to do, and then we will hold each other accountable. Are we okay with that? All right. So what are we going to do?
And thanks to our scribe.
Yes, thank you so much. So let's talk about that.
Let's
yes.
put it up. Yeah.
I would like to add something to go along with what he said.
What's your name?
Courtney.
Courtney.
ARMS 6100.
Okay.
To go along with what you said, my wife is a white female police officer, and in our household we struggle because she is on the mindset that maybe Darren Wilson was justified. And as a white woman from Jefferson County who hasn't had a negative experience with police officers, I can learn to respect that. But what he was saying is I think we also have to not forget our LGBT queer brothers and sisters and families who are police officers who might be stuck in that struggle of, defending the badge, And so I know you're talking about we should all be one. Let's not forget them and isolate them, just because you are a police officer. And because I know her struggle. I know what she's going through to be a queer woman, to be a gay woman as a police officer in a homophobic district. So I would just like to add that let's remember them as well, because not every police officer is in the mindset of Darren Wilson was right. And even if some were, let's take time out to try to explain to them and respect their thinking and their mindset and their experiences as well.
All right, so maybe we can put the reach out to police officers, queer and not queer. All right, so maybe that's something that we as a group can say that that's what we like to do, and we need to figure out how to make that happen. How do we reach out to police officers and tell them
you're not alone?
You are not alone. So There's an action point right there.
Oh, okay. Keith, you talked- okay. Just really briefly, because we talked about this, right? We talked about calling out things, and this is something that lays heavy on my heart because it's a mantra of mine. Black lives matter, right? Black lives do matter. My affirmation of that, in spite of what the world tells us, is not threatening to anyone else's life. So I don't need you to have the pushback of all lives matter because everyone else has that affirmation by being able to get home safely. Black people do not. So in the same way that the queer community pushed towards the civil right of marriage, and that was not a threat to straight marriage, me affirming that Black lives matter is not detrimental to anyone else's life. That's not to say that. I'm gonna let you facilitate, Keith. I just had to say that.
So I think that, okay, well, I have a hand here. Dad.
Yeah, so I said before I'm Melissa, I prefer, I don't care the pronouns. People tend to see that I'm a woman, so she, her, whatever. First of all, the first point I'd like to point out to everybody is that not all clergy is Christian. Not all clergy is Christian, and not all clergy is conservative. So I'm a very liberal, universal, spiritual director is what I call myself. The place where I'm at, I have Jews, I have Christians, I have Hindu, I have people who don't believe in anything, I have people who don't really know what they believe. So clergy to me does not necessarily denote Christian. So I think that's important, important for me. I think that the conversation about us all being one is a very relevant conversation. I've had the opportunity of being on the front line many nights and talking to policemen, and actually because we're very close, it's very tense, and what I hear from them when I talk to them is that they are also trapped in a system that is not working for them. So we're all, because they're thinking about, well, if I quit this job, how do I feed my family? How do I blah, blah, blah? How do I get the job? So they're defending the badge, but it's about, I've got to figure out a way to feed my family too. I got to figure out a way to exist. I really like the conversation about us all really being one. My experience, quickly as a woman on the front line, when I first would go to the front line, there would be men there that would push me back. They just, I go to the front, they would push me back. And I go to the front, they push me back. And at first, dealing with my own internalized oppression, I would just step back because the men say step back, so you step back, right? Well, and then I finally decided, I got this after a few nights, wait a minute. And I talked to the men who were pushing, hey, I understand that you're here to protect me. I understand it's a dangerous situation, but this is a risk that I choose to take as a woman, and I would like to stand in front, and I would like to be able to talk to the young people and also to the police. So that's dealing with our own internalized oppression. I think we start with conversation. We start with conversation when and even I've had problems with some of the male players. They want to lead, they want to be out. This is not just about the men. It's about us all together, working together. I think we can start by challenging. I think we should challenge some of these organizations that we mentioned. We should write letters. We should say, excuse me, can you address this issue? What is your opinion about this issue? A couple of the organizations have come out and said, well, we don't have any, this is not our area of expertise or something like that. And my response to that is you don't have one brown person, one light brown person in your organization. You don't have to be dark. Just one tan person in your organization. Somebody who can speak to this. You don't have one person who's a little bit brown who can say, I can tell you what to say. There was one statement from one organization, and I won't say the name, that was absolutely deplorable. It was, KB and I were ranting and raving in the house all night long. It was so horrible. And so I think we need to write letters to these organizations, and some of us who are articulate in that way, who can write and talk and do whatever it is we do, write it up for them what they need to say. All of us brown and black people, this might be something that you can put out. They might not want to take sides, they might not want to, but this might be something that you can say that will show some sensitivity and some camaraderie as we're dealing with oppression of everyone. I think the great fault of the civil rights movement and all of the movements has been the division. There is strength in numbers. If we all get together and say we are fighting oppression, then we are able to mobilize some more energy. When we separate in these different groups, then we're divided and we have no power, we have no voice. So I think it's about coming together, writing these organizations and saying, if you don't have a tan person or a brown or a black person, I volunteer to write out what may be helpful for you to say.
All right, so the number 2 action item I have is challenge the organizations that we mentioned. So let's write them out, call them out. Promo, Pride St. Louis, HRC St. Louis. Do we have any other organizations that we would like to put on this list that we would challenge?
The center.
Huh?
The Vital Voice.
The Vital Voice.
The center.
There are 58 groups that signed the letter of solidarity in regards to the open letter of solidarity for the tragic death of Michael Brown, saying that they would stand in solidarity with this movement. And I think we need to call on every single one of them.
Because none of them showing up for it.
Yeah, right. And that goes back to the point of naming the issue and doing the work around it are two very different things, right? They named it. They knew enough to put their name on it and say, we recognize this is a problem. And now I think you're entirely right. You do have to call them out and say, where's your work, right? No faith without works, right? Where's your work? So yeah, I
So that's a challenge. So we got number 2. We have 2 action items right now. The first one was to reach out to the police officers, probably especially the queer police officers, but also to challenge the organizations within the LGBTQIA community. So we need that list of 50. We will, I think that we probably can write letters. We can show up at their meetings. This does not have to be just a kind of behind the scenes. I think that we have the duty. What is our chance? We have the duty to fight for our freedom. We have the duty to win, right? We must love and support.
Can't say move your hair. Move your hair.
We have nothing to lose but our change, right? We have a duty to fight for our freedom. We have a duty to win. We must love and support each other. We have nothing to lose but our chains. And we got a whole lot of chains we gotta let loose, right? Right. So, does anybody else, because I wanna get action items. Does anybody else have action items? Because the next step is, who's gonna do it? And we're not leaving. I'm not gonna let you leave until you say what you're gonna do. Because we're gonna hold each other accountable, myself included, that we are gonna stop talking and we are gonna start doing. Okay? Any other action items?
Really quick, I'm gonna throw in there. He didn't say it because he's probably really humble, but I think on that list of 50 might be Show Me No Hate. Is that? No, it's not. Okay. Well, I do want to give props to Ed and Show Me No Hate for putting on this event, being an LGBT organization. That's the kind of leadership that we're looking for in our community, and we need to not only call people, hold them accountable, we also need to thank them when they do show up, when they do speak up.
Action item number 3 is to thank people who are doing the work.
And I think just so you know, on that, all these items that we're doing, everything will just be put up on showmenohate.com, just as a clearinghouse, not to say we co-opted, but we're just going to put it out there. So everything we're writing will be available there.
Okay. So I don't want to dominate the discussion, but I just want to mention like a couple of things. So, like basically, if you look back again at history, right? Like what made the Black Panther Party for self-defense so dangerous, right? Like it was basically because they connected all these different groups, all these different movements together, and that's basically it, right? So the system needs racism, right? It needs racism to survive because that's what divides our class. When we start saying that, the LGBTQ community is a white community and this community is the Ferguson issue is a black issue, we miss it. And I'll give you a couple examples, right? The National Guard, for example, has been called out on labor disputes as recently as Occupy in California, International Longshore Workers Union, right? I mean, it's a huge part of our struggle as queer people that police have tried to smash on protests,
They've also not only have they attacked the Black Panther Party, they also attacked the Gay Liberation Front, right? I mean, let's just be honest with ourselves. It's whenever we get together as people that are oppressed and name the system that we are dangerous, and name the system that we are dangerous. And I would say that like we are most effective when we are independent. That means that we're independent of the two-party system, right? Two corporate parties, and we have and they basically represent the broad interest of our class. Because you are a class. None of us are rich here. I haven't seen that, right? None of us are rich. We're not the 1%, right? We have a shared collective struggle. And remember this: during Occupy, what did the police do to Occupy? Were they just nice to us? Oh, you're white and you're protesting. Oh, we're gonna be nice to you? No, they tear gassed us. They tear gassed, right? I mean, how many raids against like Occupy activists has there been? Right? We need to remember this. So this is our struggle. This is a working class struggle, right? So, action item.
First off, I want to thank all of you guys for injecting such positive energy.
This is the owner of Blank Space on Cherokee.
So a lot of you guys have seen me here slinging booze, but in my earlier life, I was on the national leadership of the oldest revolutionary youth organization in the country. And I watched that organization implode as I watched much of the American left implode while I watched leftist organizations on 3 continents implode. So to Stephen's point when he was talking about fuck the system, to Ashton's point about resisting the system, to the sister on the end's point about how we move towards an intersectionalized movement, I'd like to call on all of us to begin a dialogue about reforming a left that I see splintered or non-existent, one that has been burned to the ground. There are elders in this room who I've known for 10 years and more involved in this struggle. And I am calling on all of us to begin a dialogue. What I would like to see, and this is something I've thought about for a long time, is something along the lines of a conference or a multi-day conversation, really discussing what it means to redefine the left, not in ways that it hasn't been defined before, but to return to what it means to say fuck the system, to modernize our approach about fighting capitalism in a way that is relative to our movements today, in a way that can be resources to mass movements today, because what it used to be was that the left was at the forefront of these movements, not as leaders, but as organizers, managing, strategizing, guiding people to put their energy to positive use. It's not enough to be mad. You've got to put it to tactical use. You know, the words tactics and strategy have been lost. Ed and I have been talking about that a lot today. So if you want to put that on your list of action items, please.
Number 4, I got you.
Yeah. And I will commit to being the person who can work on that as well. There are too many people in this city that have been marginalized when the organizations they call their political homes imploded and were in my opinion taken down from the inside. People can debate that as they will, but it's high time for a dialogue about leftist organizations to come back into the fold of the conversation.
Aladine emailed Sheeter. I came in a little late, so forgive me if this has already been mentioned, but I want to make sure that when we're lifting all of us up, that we don't forget citizens with disabilities, because I don't know, you can't always see it. I'm not saying that there aren't any representative here, but I just want to make sure that it's out there, that we're paying attention.
I've actually.
Hey, sis. I don't really like to speak, I really like to speak something sweet. I'm gonna ask everyone that's what I would like to see more, I guess, is more young Black queer folks. Because to me, from my experience, people, like especially my family, queer people of color is taboo. You don't see them often. So I would like to have space
where more young people of color, of color could, talk and assess themselves, because a person who's not all the way out, it would, to me, that would be great to see more young people out here talking and speaking about how they feel, especially with them being involved in parks, and see how they feel about the situation. But that's just.
Action number 5. Okay, so creating a great space for Black queer young people to discuss issues.
Well, and actually getting them that, right?
Yeah.
So what does that look like? That's something Ashton and I talked about in our conversation when we were thinking about this conversation. What it would look like is highlighting once again the intersectionality of it all. So making a space where someone can bring their full selves to the table, and not just have to be in a Black space, and not just have to be in a queer space, right? Because we're one person, we can't be in two separate places at once to be our full identity. So not only making sure that there is a safe, brave space for people to be, but also how do you draw them in there? And I think you have to do that work with reframing what it means to be something, right? So we have to push back. We have to reframe what it means to be queer, what it means to be gay, and say it's not just, upper class white males. We have to reshape what it means to be Black and affected, and say it's not just young Black males, right? It's also young Black women. It's Black people in general, and that includes queer people, right? People of color. So I think I would like to see if anyone has any ideas, some ideas of what that work looks like, to actually do the work to reshape what it means to be something, right? And therefore allow people to step in the room as their full selves and say, okay, even though I am queer, I can also be Black, because that's the issue, right? Is overcoming that boundary of how can you be your full self while at the same time being told that you can't be in two different places. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm not as eloquent as you, so I'm just saying.
That's action item number 6.
Lay it out.
Which one? Yes.
Oh, wait. I'm sorry, Steve.
We
One
got
second.
somebody
Woman in
else.
yeah.
All right. Once again, my name is Dee. She, her. Twitter, DE_Nichols.
DE_Nichols. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
part of my issue since first joining in the protests and all of these actions and being in all of these rooms with different organizations, different groups that represent all these different parts of my own identity, has been the fact that we're in this room and all of these great ideas are coming up, but all those other people in all of those other rooms and all of those other groups are not hearing these stories. And so there's all of this duplicity with amazing ideas. And so for myself, as I said earlier in the night, I'm all about connecting. And this project that we are working on called Beyond Today is just matching people together. But I think a big part of it is getting all of these creators of ideas connecting to each other and finding more collaboration in this movement, so that every single night there isn't the same, there aren't different meetings about the same stuff with just different people in the room. And that would be a challenge, or something that I would love to connect with any of you who have that same frustration, to meet up about and really start synthesizing a lot of this stuff, because all of it is important work, but I think we can be even more effective and more efficient with our work if we create those lines of collaboration and those lines of mutual understanding about what everyone is doing, because it's getting kind of overwhelming,
Yeah. So because I'm a Jew,